Good evening, folks. And as always, Soaring Prophets Live Thursday night. Welcome. Fantastic group of people on, as always. But what do you do when you get a diagnosis for a loved one and all of a sudden your world changes with one single word? Well, for these folks, it started with a song, and it's a beautiful story. Tonight, we're joined with Brenda and Alder, and these lovely ladies decided to do something a little bit different. They decided that they needed to take action, and they had loved ones in their life that were struggling with understanding what an Alzheimer's diagnosis meant for their grandmother, their loved one. And I think Alder's going to jump in here at some point and tell us her story because it's sort of based on that. But folks, I want to thank you again for joining us Thursday night. It's been a bit of a whirlwind here the last couple of weeks. And as always, we're joined with such beautiful, wonderful people that are changing the world. And as the banner says above me, we get to unveil those stories of champions. I was joking with Alder before we got on here about the CNN interviews and the MSNBC interviews. And she was saying they weren't quite knocking the door down, chatting with them. But that's why we're here. We're having these opportunities to bring a little bit of that, pull back the onion of maybe stories that are hitting you, your family, but definitely your community. So first of all, Brenda, Alder, thank you so much for joining us on Thursday night with Soaring Prophets. And Brenda, maybe you can jump in here and talk a little bit about the program that you've put together. Because you folks, you ladies have known each other since 1980, maybe a little bit before I was born. But you folks have worked together in solving some very big problems for families. And maybe you can tell a little bit about it.
Yeah, Brenda, how did you meet when you were like 4 years old? I just wondered.
Well, Alder and I were doing our music therapy internships together at the university or at Kansas City, Missouri Mental Health in Kansas City, Missouri. And
Wow.
that's how we met. We became friends and have been friends ever since. We both went on to get master's degrees in music therapy. And I pioneered the music therapy program at the University of Iowa, hospitals and clinics, where I worked with child psych, adult psych, chemical dependency, and all general hospital diagnoses. So it was a really broad kind of training. And we talked about doing a project over the years, and we dabbled in a few things. But when Alder called me with wanting to, it started with a book idea. I just thought, yeah, this needs to be done. And she is a big picture person and I'm a detail person. And so we work really well together. And that's how we came to do this project.
So
Alder,
sorry, buddy. Alder,
why don't you fill in the rest of the story?
All right. Thank you all so much for having us on. I love good news. And that's what you guys do, is bring good news to people. And I love that. My mom had Alzheimer's disease. And when she was diagnosed, it's pretty scary. Scary for the person being diagnosed and for the family. And you start wondering what's going to happen and how this is going to play out. And the grandchildren would come and visit like on holidays from school kind of thing. And as mom progressed, they were growing up, but little Olivia, and she told me I could tell her story, so it's okay. She was 7 at the time when mom was really getting into something called middle stage Alzheimer's, where you really don't know that you have the disease. You're really confused. You're in and out at times. Well, Olivia was showing my mom her monsters. Olivia loves to draw. She's a little artist. And she was drawing these monsters, and it was like homework monster helped her with homework, and thunder monster helped her with storms. And she was showing these, and then she put them away in her monster box, and everybody kind of headed off to bed. Well, the next morning, her monster box was just gone. And she panicked and got a bit dramatic. I know Gran stole my monsters. And we're like, no, it's okay. She didn't steal them. It'll be all right. We'll find them. And we did. They were in my mom's laundry basket. And how do you explain to a 7-year-old
right.
what's going on? And there was just no resources. The only resources were a few books about memory loss. They didn't talk about wandering and picking up things. So it is just, it just wasn't there. I'm like, I got to do something about this. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, it's such a multifaceted thing that a lot of people don't think of. Like, so I think it's like one of those things that at first we kind of put them behind closed doors. I know when I first started my career, I kind of was leaning in that direction back in between 80 and 89. I was leaning that. I was in high school, but my mom was a nurse, so I was working in the kind of that care area in the hospital. And then we were dealing with that, but it was more behind closed doors. People didn't know really what to do, and I saw a lot of people going against it. Like they would come out, and like one lady thought she was at a resort, and they would say, "You're not at a resort. Stop it," and go against it. And I think that was kind of the thing back then, to go against it and stuff. So you guys not only decided that we have to develop a program for families, but we also have to develop a program just in general for everyone to know more about Alzheimer's. Why? What brought you to that point? Is it similar to what I'm saying, where you were in the system and you're like, wow, like people are really handling this wrong? Or is it more that you just felt that more and more people were being diagnosed and therefore because you don't think about it. I don't know how many people out there watching right now even knows really what Alzheimer's is, except what they see on TV, which is not exactly accurate all the time. Mm-hmm. So maybe tell our story. Who wants to go first and tell us a little bit about like why Alzheimer's? What are the things that you're trying to meet?
We wanted to, because Alzheimer's is in the news everywhere now, either about a drug that's being developed or just the prevalence of it. And because of that, and the baby boomers aging and people not being able to afford these care communities because it's very expensive. So a lot of people are having to bring people into their homes and they don't have the skills with which to deal with these people. Right. So it was basically to fulfill a need to have tools to help children understand, but also to help the whole family understand. So it's an intergenerational problem, and we wanted children to not be kept from those people. And, the whole thing, like when we were in school, it was reality orientation, keep these people oriented to reality. And that's just so not the right thing. In our program, we talk about don't argue with the person.
Yes,
kind of fun
exactly what we were taught.
Remembering or what they're talking about. So it was basically the need. And both of us are, we've always done things to fulfill needs for people and to try to make life better for others. And so it really does stem for me from that point of this, we have something to contribute. So let's do it.
So Brenda and Alder, you folks decide to write a book. And again, looking through, you guys have a fantastic website. And folks, if you check the QR code here beside you, pull out your phone, take a picture of that, it'll pop up. Their website is all encompassing. They have all sorts of different resources there, but also the podcast piece. And I know I might be a little bit biased when I say the podcasts are a fantastic way of getting information out to individuals. So you folks have partnered with other podcasts like you are here, spreading awareness, growing awareness around this. And when you decided to write a book, it sounds like this is Alder's story, right? And it all kind of started with a song. That was, you folks started back in the day and you've written this beautiful song. But why children's literature? Why go to a storybook of the child? Does it go back to Alder with these monsters that you with your grandmother and was it your niece? I'm sorry.
My niece. Yeah, you got it. Yep.
So it sounds like this is where this grew out of, from this one interaction that otherwise could have been, really sort of traumatic for a young lady. Mm-hmm. She's looking at it as like, what did my grandmother do with my things? This is awful. This is terrible. And now it has sprung this new and innovative way of teaching. Because again, we can teach down. It's hard to teach up sometimes, right? So I think it's a great thing. Alder, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about why you folks have done the book and the caricatures and what you're bringing with that piece of literature?
It was all about wanting to do a children's book, to explain it to children. And we wanted to go beyond Gran doesn't remember or grandpa doesn't remember, because the not remember is really kind of one of the easier points of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're wandering. Sometimes people are trying to get out the door, not wanting to eat, not wanting to go along with the program, repeating things over and over and over. And then there's some of the messier things of forgetting where the bathroom is and how to do those things. And children see this.
Yeah.
They're not blind. They know what's going on. They see what's happening, and they need to be respected, and they need to be educated so that they really understand that this is a disease. Gran or grandpa are not being mean. They're not being ugly. We need to treat them with love and respect and understanding. And this is what happens in the brain when this disease goes on, and building that compassion. And they've done some really interesting research. I don't know if you know, let me make sure I think this is at 5.4 million people under the age of 18 are caregivers.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing that there's that many young children or under 18 caring for a loved one who has some kind of disease.
Wow.
And these kids need support and they need resources. And we wanted to make it fun. You learn when it's fun. And music with information just really sticks. So
Alder, you folks talked about when you first started here, kind of in the green room when we talked, is that you both have music therapy degrees. So how have you folks used music therapy in regards to tapping into that developmental piece, whether it be for the children themselves, or are you using the music therapy in a way to tap into the individuals with the disease, with Alzheimer's themselves? And if so, what sort of outcomes are you seeing? Are you seeing that this is successful? How is this working?
We're trying to get it out to the people who need it. There are 2.5 million people in the US alone who are in what's called the sandwich generation. They're caring for children age 18 and under, and a loved one who has Alzheimer's or some other kind of, terrible ailment. So I guess the way our backgrounds come into it is just being able to put it together. Like the awareness program is a 5-video series. And so we have put it together so that it's intriguing and appealing to children, yet informative for adults. So we're just trying to get it out there. We haven't we haven't had huge sales, I'll admit, but we certainly are getting the word out there and raising awareness. And so the music therapy comes into how we approached it. I mean, we worked really hard on how to word these things in the videos. I'm also a performing musician, so we have a recording studio. So we wrote it together. I narrated it, and we put it together in it's like a slideshow kind of video thing. So we're basically using our backgrounds to approach it sensitively, and but yet make it fun and appealing that kids will want to hear about it. But we're not doing music therapy per se, although like the song itself has a therapeutic element, because it definitely has a teaching element to it. And because we're talking about feelings and how to interact with people, that's kind of where the therapy comes in. That's how I see it. Anyway, Alder, do you have anything you want to add to that about the music therapy?
Yeah, I sure do. I spent a lot of my career working with people who are older in nursing homes, in their homes, that type of thing, as a music therapist, but also as a counselor and a nurse. That's what I'm doing now. And just when you bring the music in and you start singing together, I mean, it can just be "You Are My Sunshine." People start perking up. And I was always amazed. I would go into a nursing home and start playing the old songs and singing the old songs, and people who were like sitting there lost in their own worlds and not paying attention, all of a sudden they start perking up.
I do that with James all the time.
All the time. You just did it just before this interview, to be honest.
Well, there is.
I think you're absolutely true. Like, it's absolutely true. The little work that I did at the start of my career, before I realized that I really wanted to work with kids instead of seniors, because it pulled on my heartstrings too much, and it is hard. I don't know how professionals do that. I don't know how you guys do it.
Day in and day out. It's
watch someone slowly die every day. Like I was forming real attachments to these people. And they were sharing their stories about, surviving wars and their loved ones and their kids and all that stuff. And then the next day, either mentally they were gone and they don't remember you, let alone all the stories they just told you, or they in fact did pass away. And it was very, I don't know, it was too much for me. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's a beautiful thing to care for people that are often not in the limelight, are often not talked about, that we'd like to put into corners. I really do appreciate you guys doing that. So we were talking. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I believe everybody has the right to die with dignity and to be treated with dignity until the very end, no matter in what condition they are. And like, for example, I mean, I didn't mention, but my dad died he was 95, totally high functioning, and he died of cognitive COVID. It affected his brain. He never had to have on a respirator. It just took his brain and put him into full dementia, wow. Which was very, very difficult because it was pre-vaccine. And I just remember talking to the people who were caring for him. They weren't trained, they just had this job in this nursing home. And I remember having to have a talk with them saying, this man was highly functioning 4 weeks ago, and he is a very successful person. So please treat him with dignity, that kind of thing, because, and then as I have performed, I've worked in nursing homes and things, but I've also done a lot of performing, and the staff will come up and say, that person is catatonic most of the time. And when we would come in and sing, they would be singing the words, tapping their feet, and any little sign like that there's still someone in there means that they need to be treated like there's still someone in there, So I just wanted to add that.
You're right. It's so interesting because we would have bands come in on the weekend, like on a Saturday or a Sunday, or mass. We'd have, like, it doesn't matter what denomination, any denomination, it depended on the people, but they would like just perk up and they would follow along and they would sing the songs and they would like pretend to strum, or they would like start, tapping. Some of them would even dance. And it was unbelievable the difference in, like, this person, like, all week sat in a chair and you don't know if they're staring out a window or they're inside their brain. They don't want to interact with you. They barely, you have to feed them. And here they are moving. I just think that is so beautiful. I want to get back to your program though. So the superhero in your program, not only you two, is an 8-year-old, and it's about how the 8-year-old relates to Grant, correct?
Right.
Now, what is it that you're trying to impart to other young people to teach them how to relate with Grant? Like, what are the key indicators? Like, what should be the young people be doing? Because I think it's super important, because I know when kids came in, it didn't matter if they were their personal grandkids or just kids. As soon as they walked in the door, the smiles, the joy, the happiness, the interaction, the wanting to reach out and hug was huge. So the more kids we can get into these places, the better. But it's scary. So how do you prepare your child? And I think that's what this program is a little bit about. Could someone
That is a
explain
lot what it's about. Yeah.
Mhm. So we encourage families to have the kids watch. Oops. Am I talking over?
You are? No, you're good. Keep going.
We encourage families to sit down with the videos before they go in, let's say, into the nursing home to visit or grandpa or whatever. And they can sit down, and then let's say they're in the middle to late stage, because that's usually when someone is put into a nursing home. And they look and they watch the little videos, and then they talk to the parent, and then they come up with ideas. We're not just going to walk into that nursing home and kind of stand there and go, what do we do?
Right.
No, let's bring some markers and some paper. Let me bring my playlist. I remember Gran loved these songs, or we would watch Sesame Street together. And these are some favorite songs we sang together. So they go in prepared to do something and to interact and have fun and make that relationship a lot stronger, so that later, after Gran passes or whatever, they can say, hey, I had such fun going there. Yeah. It wasn't a scary place. It was a wonderful place.
Right.
Now you're not talking about like the TV shows where this stuff unlocks memory and all of a sudden the person comes back and goes, oh my God, there's my child. That's not what you're talking about at all, is it?
Not at all.
The videos are like
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I just want to say a little bit about the videos, because I think it's important. There are 5 of them. 4 of them are intended for the children. The first one is, what is Alzheimer's disease? And Alder came up with this really clever way to demonstrate it. And it's like a 6-minute video. Then there is like a 9-minute video for the mild stage. And we talk about, in each stage, we talk about the behaviors that one can expect, tips for how to interact, and we give a list of activities. So that's what she was talking about. If a person was in the mild stage or moderate stage, you could watch that video. The moderate is the longest video. It's like 11 minutes, because the moderate stage is the longest stage, usually. And so that will have tips and activities. And then the severe stage, which is really a difficult stage to know what to do, it's a 7-minute video. And we talk about, how you can talk to someone who's bedridden, and hearing is the last thing to go. And so one needs to assume that the person can hear. So they can hear, I love you. They can hear a story you tell them. I remember talking to my dad on the phone, telling him what I did with my day. And, to tell him I was thinking about him, and I would sing to him and leave out a word and he could fill in that word. So those are the ones for the children. And then there's a 26-minute video for adults who are raising these children or grandparents. And it talks about how to explain to the child what to tell them to do if the grandparent or the person starts doing this. What should you do? What can the child do? Things the child can help do. And then
time to get a responsible adult.
Yes. Time when it's time.
That's really important. We don't want that burden, of course, to be all on the child.
Right. Or
the child to get afraid. So when do you need to go get a responsible adult?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like what you folks are building out here, it isn't just an Alzheimer's, book in that regard, right? Is that it's an aging book, and all the profiteers out there, for you ladies, you folks are now profiteers. You're in our corner now, and the profiteers are our followers that watch us on our Thursday nights and do that sort of thing. But the profiteers out here know James and my personal story with our loved ones, and I lost my father here fairly recently, and I, again, being his primary caregiver, I'm a little older than 18, so I don't click that demographic, that you talked about earlier. But there is something amazingly special in those last moments of someone's life, and not just last moments, but the last weeks and months. when the inevitable is in the room, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it sounds like what you folks are doing is you're giving a bit of light in that really dark space where that unknown. I remember going up to hospice and visiting my father and walking through the doors, and it was like I floated. Like, I don't remember my feet touching the ground. I don't remember all of it because it was just a blur. It was just a process that I was going through. And it sounds like what you folks are doing is you're saying, hey, listen, put some thought into this, ground yourself in some of the literature, some of the videos, some of the music that you're putting together. And a lot of people find great solace in being able to stop, take a minute, and hear a song, hear something that now gives a little bit of perspective. Read a story with your child. That I find some of the best times where, those that can't do coach, I do that a lot with my daughter. And that was something that we would do going to see my dad when he was in hospice.
Mm-hmm.
I would talk to her about what we're going to expect walking in these doors. And that allowed me to kind of center myself in those moments and kind of take a totality, the view of it, because I was trying to prepare a child. And I think that what you folks are doing is much more than just hitting on that, young person, that, 15 minus in age demographic, is that you're allowing people to really sit in themselves, get into their own personas, understand what's happening, because it's devastating. Like when this happens to a family, no one can prepare for this. No one signs up in their 20s and 30s and is like, that's how I want to go out the door at the end of this. So there's a lot of emotion, and there's probably a lot of things left unsaid. You talked about anger when in regards to, I think grandma did X, or I think grandpa did Y. And there's probably some animosity that needs to be worked through. And it sounds like you folks are doing this on a totally broad scale in regards to just aging, the death process, the final moments. And have you had anyone reach out to you folks and say, hey, listen, I didn't have an Alzheimer's individual in my life, but I had X, Y, and Z, and this was a unique experience? Or maybe you can speak to why you think that would work.
Well, I worked for hospice as a counselor for 12 years.
Right. You have that, like, you come across that you have been at that bedside.
Oh, yeah, many, many times. And I've been there, with my parents. In fact, I've seen a couple of comments pop up of people who have been there who are so relating to what you're saying. And it's just beautiful to kind of see those comments come up. But it's an honor.
It is. It really is
an honor to be there and to be with the family. And the goal as a hospice professional is to what we call a good death.
Wow.
And a good death is that the person is comfortable at a point of peace, and the family's comfortable and at a point of peace. And it can just be a really nice, I know that sounds weird, but it can be a beautiful, comforting experience.
Right.
And I remember one of the grandchildren, a little bit older, but she was here when my mom was dying. And she was, I'm trying to think, 12, 13 years old. But she would just go and sit with mom and read her Bible stories. And just sit there and read Bible stories and be quiet with her. And it was just so beautiful that this child felt comfortable enough. And I would hope that she felt comfortable enough because we felt comfortable. Because we said it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably because, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, as a music therapist in the hospital, there were many times when I literally sang a person into the next realm while the family was there. And it was sometimes very difficult to do, but many, many experiences like that, the music helped everybody with that transition, that loss.
Right.
And it is an honor to be in that position.
It's pretty incredible. Like, so I did it with my mom. It was over a course of 4 days as we gathered as a family, and we were able to have those conversations at bedside. She was not with us, unfortunately, but she, like you said, she could hear us. So we had lots of conversations with her, around her, joked around, laughed, as she, and then unfortunately she passed away with us in the room. And it was tough. And speaking of tough, we kind of had a question here, and it's an interesting question. When I was working back then you would walk in and they would forget who you were, and I'm nobody. I'm just the guy that drops off juice and cookies. I'm a kid. I think I was like 15 at the time. But our question was, what happens when your 9-year-old daughter isn't remembered? How do you explain that to them? Like, this is their grandma who used to make them cookies, used to play bridge with them, used to teach them how to knit, used to do all these things with them. And now they not only do they maybe not remember them, but maybe get upset because you say, but wait, I'm Shirley. You remember me? What do you do with that?
Well, that's the beauty of our What is Alzheimer's video.
Yeah.
We're going down the same road here. Our What is Alzheimer's? This is how we explain it to kids. I'll give it away. Okay, the disease affects the brain cells. So pretend you are thirsty and you're going to go get a glass of milk. I mean, it's not, when you really think about what it takes to go get a glass of milk, you've got to walk to the kitchen, reach to the cupboard, get the glass out. You've got to go to the refrigerator, open it up. I mean, there's a lot of steps. Well, the brain in someone with Alzheimer's short circuits. The little synapses will stop, and you might get the glass out of the cupboard and look at it and have no clue what you're going to do with that glass. And so this is how we explain it to kids. And then we go on and talk, and when I do talks live, I talk about the most important thing is to go in and introduce yourself every time.
Always.
And say how you're related. And they may not remember, they may call you another name or whatever. It doesn't matter, but they know you're a friendly. Right. They can feel that you are somebody who loves them. And that's what's most important. It doesn't matter if you are Susan or Jerry or whoever, but just knowing that there's somebody there that loves you and you know that there's a relationship, and that's what's most important.
Well, it seems like, again, the advice that you folks are providing gives the lay person, someone that is otherwise dealing with a very traumatic situation. And my experience with, most traumatic situations is people freeze, right? They maybe don't show up when otherwise they would. They might have lived all their life being an amazing advocate for their loved one. Then all of a sudden they're getting to that later stages and they can't cope. They can't deal. They don't know what to do. They just are paralyzed by the unknown and the fear that is coming. And Alzheimer's comes across to me. And again, I am a layperson, right? But Alzheimer's comes across to me as one that would be incredibly fear-inducing because it feels like that person has died 1,000 times for you. It feels like every time you walk in that room, that person doesn't recognize you, doesn't understand the relationship, doesn't understand that you were their hero, right? Like they were your hero growing up. Superman, that grandmother that was that amazing individual. We talk about the greatest generation that are now being affected by this. So when you're dealing with all of these emotions, people become paralyzed. In your time dealing with the hospice, dealing with, these individuals at the end of their life, I imagine there's a lot of times where you look around the room and there's someone missing. There's family and loved ones that couldn't do it, couldn't deal with those final moments. What does that look like for, yourself as a caregiver in trying to advocate for your entire family to be there through these hard discussions at times?
I think we have to accept that not everybody has the ability within themselves to really be able to be there 100%. but that doesn't mean that they don't care. And it's just another level of understanding that, some people just can't, like, not everybody could do the work that we have done in the past. I mean, it's tough sometimes, but nurses and doctors go through the same thing. They have to see these things over and over again. And you can say, well, people kind of maybe get calloused or something, but really, I don't think that's really true. But you do have to kind of get kind of used to it. But I think everybody deals with it on their best level that they can.
Right.
And for some, it means not being able to be there, even when they could, maybe. And I think that's just another level of understanding that needs to take place. And that people really do try to do their best, I think. And but I was going to mention that, like, on a lot of contacts that we've made has been on Instagram and LinkedIn. And on Instagram in particular, there's a huge caregiving community with all kinds of resources and products. And I've been engaging with people who, say, thank you for doing this. I wasn't allowed to see my grandmother. So that person has no memories of her grandmother.
Right.
I mean, even if they had memories of her grandmother who had Alzheimer's, that would be a memory. And our whole goal is to help families create positive memories. So yes, maybe she couldn't remember you sometimes, but remember that time when you played checkers with her, or played cards or whatever, or drew pictures together.
Yeah.
Those memories, are helpful in dealing with the loss.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. Any memory that you have, like, so you end up, when you go through something traumatic, the negative memories stick. So if you can reintroduce some positive memories, and you can take that time and go, yeah, you know what, it was a horrible time for me. But, at least I was there to, like, read the Bible, play cards, sing to them. At least they knew they weren't alone. Maybe they didn't know who I was. Maybe they thought I was the nurse. Maybe. But they did know I cared. They did know I loved them. They did know I was appreciative. So you guys have been in that situation where the wife or the husband or the daughter or the granddaughter is sitting there going, they don't even know me. What's the point of me being here? So there's people out there right now, I'm telling you right now, watching us going, yeah, I go in there every weekend. And every time it's like, they don't even know who the fuck I am. They don't even know who I am. Why bother going in? What do you say to them at that point? What do you say when they're like disheartened? They know their loved one is passing away. Probably a lot of this is that pain that's coming out, bubbling to the surface. But there's also that thought of, am I making a difference?
And you bring up a really good point. And what we try to do, and what we recommend families do, especially with kids, you talked about the child wasn't allowed to go, or the child wasn't allowed to see, or they wouldn't let me participate. So the child never learned. But they may have learned, oh, this is a scary thing.
Right.
They learned that because they picked up from the parents, oh, this is scary and you can't go there. So it can go back generations, and we want to help build that empathy and build some teaching, because it's all about education, and it's all about listening. And somebody says to me, I mean, I've walked out of ICUs where they're getting ready to, and there's someone standing around the corner who just can't go in there. And I've walked out and I said, hey, how's it going? And just be with them and see if they want to talk. If they want to talk, that's great. Sometimes you can get below that stuck, that freeze, that fear, that frustration, and get below that and finally get someone to talk a little bit, if you're just kind of quiet and compassionate and there with them. And I think that's so important, is that there's someone with them. My brothers weren't as comfortable. They were not in the caregiving field. And I remember at one point I was driving 2 hours each way, 2 hours, one way, 2 hours home, to kind of help mom and dad. And I was concerned because, my gosh, what if something happened to dad and mom has Alzheimer's? What's going to happen? And all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, my brothers have fingers. They can call. They can call. They lived out of state. They can call. So we set up a call schedule. And my brothers would have certain nights they called. And now we talk about, and they talk about how precious that time was, that there are few nights that they called to check in and the conversations they had. So it's just kind of taking that risk, or somebody just saying, hey, let me give you a chore to do.
Well, that hits home so much for me in regards to my family. So my father was the youngest of three, and his family every night talked. So his brother and his sister every night would talk 20 minutes, 4 hours, didn't matter, but they talked every single night of their life. And his brother passed away 8 months before he did. Oh. And that was kind of the beginning of this conversation ending. And it was this generational conversation. You could always go over into the corner and dad be on the phone, and you never knew which one it was, but you'd say, hey, because it was one of the uncles. And then when my father passed away, that was kind of the end of those conversations. And it was really important for me for first year and a half, almost 2 years now, to continue having those conversations. Pick up the phone, call my aunt, call my other aunt, making sure that everything's all right. What are you guys doing? What are you up to? Just it's the small talk, little stuff, right? But that generationally, that is how you keep those binds. And for myself, family is such a huge motivating factor. It is my why. And James and I, we've had the privilege of doing this podcast where we get a couple thousand people that'll watch these episodes, and we have people reach out to us all the time, and they're like, when you tell your story and you say, hey, I picked up the phone and called X, Y, and Z family member. They come out and they say, like, that empowered me to do it. And James with his running, and James with all the stuff that he does, is that you folks are standing and you're sending out this whole new narrative that can be around Alzheimer's and aging. I really like the Alzheimer's stuff, that what you folks are doing, but I think it just goes to aging and, end of life. And that's, you folks are doing such an amazing job with making sure that people, the individual themselves, are treated to the best possible capacity they can. You're advocating for that. But by helping their families, you're helping them. You're making that negotiation of what end of life looks like so much easier for everybody. And I want to thank both of you folks for coming tonight. It's a beautiful journey you're on. How do people get in touch with you? How do they get in touch with your resources? And how do they have a direct conversation with each of you?
Well, we've got our email is mackenziemeetsalzheimers@gmail.com. And if you remember Mackenzie Meets Alzheimer's, then you can get us, because that's our website, our Instagram, our social media, LinkedIn. So you can reach out and touch us through Mackenzie Meets Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yes, ladies, thank you so much for coming on and having this important conversation with us. So I work a bit in behavior, and behavior is a traumatic event, much like this is a traumatic event. So there's a lot of training that goes in that. You have to be trained to a certain point that when you get into these traumatic situations, that you react. It's like hopping on a bike and riding it. You do not have to think, because there's so much going on, so many traumatic things going on, that you can react. This is that traumatic event. Yeah. And I love the fact that you are prepping people. You're giving them the code. You're giving them the directions of, so that they feel seen. First they feel seen, which is the most important thing you can do for anybody, is make them feel seen. Hey, I've experienced the things that are in this book and these videos and these things. Secondly,
I didn't understand that.
Google is that. It's not
Siri's on it.
Yeah. Siri, Google is so interested they're talking to us. Second, you're giving them a roadmap so that if they prepare themselves and they get ready, when they get into that room and they maybe see hoses, or maybe their parent doesn't recognize them, or maybe it's the smells or stuff. I know that when my mom passed away, when I go to a hospital for any reason, I'm triggered.
Yeah.
Like all of the sights and sounds and smells and the bleach and you name it, it triggers me. So when I went for my dad, when he was passing away, I was doubly triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been nice to have a plan. It would have been nice to have a code book that I could prepare my mind so that I could go and do these things. Because like you said, not everyone has the perseverance to fight through the tragedy and the hurt and the pain, and they're stuck at that door. Or maybe they're stuck at home. And, you know, the regret you feel when you can't walk through that threshold to say goodbye, to talk to your, is huge. And you guys are counteracting that in such a big way. Not only are you doing that for adults, you're reaching back and you're getting the kids, and the kids are the most important things in the world. And imagine a 9-year-old now doesn't have to live with the regret of not going to see their grandma before they died.
And that is so important. And I was just going to say, to reinforce that regret issue is, you know, I don't mean to jump in on you here, but it's like, you know, I would talk to people and say, you're more likely to regret not going in there and saying goodbye than you are if you, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I think you know what I'm trying to say. It's like,
you're absolutely right.
Of not making the move, you know, of not saying goodbye. Avoid
walking through that door and making a mistake is more important than not walking through that door and not even trying. Because if you don't even try, you're going to regret it forever. If you walk through that door and you make a mistake, you can get over that in any second. Ladies,
and what's the mistake?
No mistake is big enough that it's going to matter. You're absolutely right. Ladies, I love what you're doing. It's super important. Profiteers out there, you know, we went to Podfest, you know, we went to Orlando there. We had such a good time. We met some incredible people, including some people from StreamYard that I was pretty exciting to. I was excited. I was kind of like nerding out, interviewing Christian there, and some other people like Christine, I think her name is, and she has this unique idea of bringing faith and disability together. And I'm looking forward to sharing these stories with you. They're going to come out in the next couple of weeks. It was fun to be face to face, right on the ground, talking to these amazing people. And I can't wait to share their stories, because we have snippets of their stories. And later on, they're going to come like this and tell us the full story. And I'm super excited. Profiteers out there, if your loved one is in the hospital right now, if your loved one is at a retirement home, wherever they are, just sit with them. Just be there. Just connect. These lovely ladies, they can show you the way. Even if your family member doesn't have Alzheimer's, go check out their stuff, because there's still tidbits in there that you'll find. Thank you so much for coming on. Let's remember to heal our minds, bodies, and souls together. I love you all. Patrick?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, ladies, again, and I'm reiterating what I'd said earlier. I think it's a beautiful thing that you folks are doing. And, you know, get in touch with these folks. It doesn't matter where you are in your life's journey, that loved one, even if they're not hospitalized. Maybe you're struggling with dealing with some of the little things that are going on in their world. It's a scary thing when you get up into those older years and looking kind of at the end of the light, if you will. And again, Alder, Brenda, it's a pleasure. And it was a really cool experience tonight, and it's very reminiscent of my experience with my father, which I'm very passionate about. Loved him. He was my superhero, and that's why I brought that up tonight. So get in touch with the website. You can click on the QR code here beside you. They're going to have a ton of resources and great information. But like James said, Podfest was a great time. Got great interviews coming up. We've got some interviews that we got to touch base on here tonight. I believe we're over in Russia with Putin, I think, tonight. Isn't that the big interview around the world? But from me, folks, as always, stay informed and let's make some money together. Ladies, send us out. We'd like to get a little tidbit of information from both of you. We'll start with Alder, and Brenda, you get to repose for a quick second here, but a tidbit of advice for somebody that's going through a situation that you folks are advocating for. and how they can find that light in the darkness and put 2 feet together and walk in those doors smarter, more with more information and an understanding heart.
The number one is you are not alone. You are not alone. Lots of people walk this journey, and just reach out. Just reach out. Any of your resources in your community, your friend, your neighbor, just reach out and open your mouth and say, hey, help me through this. And I think that's the number one, is know you're not alone.
Brenda.
For those of you, like the listeners or viewers with children, and I would just say, if you have someone in your family who has Alzheimer's or dementia, allow your children to be a part of it. And it's a wonderful way to teach them how to be a compassionate person and how to be understanding. And don't argue with the person. Teach them how to be listeners and to enjoy whatever the person's talking about. Just allow your children to have contact, and love and understanding is the key. It's all about love and understanding. And some people who have Alzheimer's turn into, some people didn't have very good relationships with their families to begin with, and the person gets Alzheimer's and the relationship flourishes.
Right.
And it can go the opposite way too. But, it's just approach it with love and understanding for everyone.
Approach everything with love and understanding, no matter whether it's conflict or a new person. Love and understanding is the way to go. Thank you so much for taking us out with that, Brenda. And thank you, Alder. What a great interview. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.